Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Taylor, and I help organizations take their complex missions and tell those stories to funders. And I have with me today my recent clients, Cobbled Streets. So just to give a little introduction, Cobbled Streets brings positive childhood experiences and enriching opportunities to children in foster and kinship care. It was founded by Sherry Shink, who's not with us today, but she has spent over 3 decades fighting for children's rights and founded Cobbled Streets in 2020 to bring preventative community-based model that supports struggling families and helps them thrive beyond crisis. So with me today is Bissy Gaudiano, the development director of Cobbled Streets. She brings more than 18 years of experience working with youth as a teacher, mentor, and leader, and brings her lifelong passion for empowering children in her role, leading fundraising, donor communications, and corporate outreach at Cobbled Streets. And Kiara Galvan, the program coordinator, who is a social work graduate of Metropolitan State University, and draws on both personal and professional experience in child welfare and youth advocacy to help connect and support young people in transitioning from foster care and homelessness. So Bissy and Kiara, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's been so wonderful working with you this year. And so I just wanted to start by having you tell me a little bit about Cobbled Streets and the impact you saw at the time we were working together. Like, what were you seeing as the organization approached the 5-year mark?
So when we first started working with you, Emily, we were just under 5 years old. So we're still, relatively very new organizations. We still are. And so starting to understand the importance of being able to communicate our impact and understand our impact. I think when a nonprofit just first is getting started, you're just diving in, you're doing the work, and that's a lot. And then, after a few years, you're like, oh, wow, okay, it's so important to be able to understand the impact you're making and be able to communicate it clearly for funders, for your program design. So we were kind of right at that point. And we've been trying things and working on a few different systems and surveys and everything. Could be considered a little bit haphazard, and we were looking for some help with this evaluation work. And we had learned how challenging it was to describe the impact of our work to funders, and having funders and people really understand the challenges that children and caregivers and foster care are going through. It's really difficult, and it's difficult for people to care about things they don't understand. So we were looking for help, not only having other people understand these challenges and the why it matters piece, but also what the work we are doing, how it is helping.
So what is it? What's unique about Cobbled Streets that made describing its impact so challenging?
I would say, what we provide is unique because there's no other organization that's providing these like extracurricular activities for kids, or, most organizations aren't meeting the kids or the families where they're at. Like, what does your kid need? Is there an activity or an outlet that you think would benefit them, considering all of whether that's like behavioral issues or emotional issues that they're seeing in the kids that have just come into their care? And so I think that's something that's unique about us. But I think that people, when they hear about us, it's almost like, oh, that's awesome. That's like the cherry on top, and it's definitely more than just a cherry on top. It's like foundational. I think that our mission is to mitigate and try to prevent long-term trauma that happens when you're in care, and try to uplift these kids. And so I think it's just really hard to capture, like Bissy said, capture that. And it's so unique that what we do is so helpful to these kids, whether that's like giving them confidence or giving them bonding time with the family so that they're able to just incorporate themselves into this new family unit. So it's just, I would say, your question, right? It was just like, what makes us unique? I'd say that's what makes us unique. We're just trying so hard to show people the importance of how these activities are more than just the cherry on top, but we are just so foundational in trying to build these young people up and to who they'll be in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, really well said, Kiara. Like, we're not giving like the extras, right? Like that. A lot of times, sometimes funders view these things as extras.
Well, I feel like I remember you saying that, like, a lot of people say, "Oh, you're like Make-A-Wish" or something in the beginning. Do you know where that was coming from?
Funders. Sherry Shink heard it from some funders, and she's like,
okay. So they just completely misunderstood.
Yes, and I think it misunderstood that we're so much more than just like one experience, like the community we're trying to build and like the network we're trying to supportive network we're trying to create for these kiddos. The other thing that's unique about is us that makes the describing our impact challenging is like there's confidentiality built in with this population, and that's an ongoing challenge for us. This population can be a bit invisible to most people. It's not obvious who's experiencing this. You're not allowed to know who they are most of the time. We can't show faces, for a lot of pictures. And so these things are hard to show impact when you can't show like the smiling face of the kid who just got the bike, right? It can be tricky. I think that invisibility factor, it's not like, for example, if there's a big flood and all of a sudden people need to raise money for this huge flood and you see the catastrophe and the happening, it's just very tangible and easy for people to understand. Serving kids in foster care is not like that. It's just not obvious. It's very difficult to understand the need and what these kids are going through.
Yeah, I mean, even not only the change you make is kind of internal, but also the experience that they've had throughout their life isn't seen. And so I think even myself coming into this project didn't fully understand. So I wanted to just share a few, and you had started with an impact story that you were sharing prior to us meeting. And so I'm just going to quickly flip through if you have a few words to say about what you were doing with this document and what you were hoping for next.
So the funniest part about this is I had Emily seeing you. I took you did a webinar with, I can't remember who. It was a free one, and I jumped in on it, and I learned from you about telling your story and even calling it an impact story, and the importance of having, data and quotes balancing each other out. And there was a lot of other things you said that I couldn't do, but I was like, okay, I'm going to make one for Cobbled Streets. So this was before I even really got to work with you. This was sort of just a rudimentary sort of, like I said, young, little bit green attempt at creating something like that. And it just, needed some refining, and we focused a lot. We didn't have a really solid data collection tool yet. So our data was a little bit, not quite there yet.
Yeah, I think we talked about that. It was a little more output focused, like what are your activities versus the outcomes and impact. But a great collection of information and quotes. So you were already listening to the people that you serve. So you had a really great foundation for that. So I think as we started working together, what did you learn from this work that made the biggest difference at Cobbled Streets?
I would say for us, we really focus on the kids, and not that what I'm going to say is like us saying, the kids aren't just as important, but we really got to hear more from the adults' perspective. And we realized that we needed to almost not only just focus on the kids, but the caregivers themselves, because it's kind of just all together. If the kid's happy, the guardian's going to be happy. And if the guardian's happy, the kid will be happy. So I think that was one of the biggest things working with you, is that like struck a chord with us, was like, oh, maybe we're not hearing the guardians out as much as we need to be.
The listening sessions that you conducted were so valuable. I think having that outside perspective from you, like thinking about this for us, and then having like a third party person talking to our families was just so eye-opening for us to really better understand like the hopes that these families had, the challenges that they were going through, how they viewed us you know, what they saw us as, what type of organization, and then the impacts they were experiencing. And what Kiara said too, we didn't realize how much impact we were having on the caregivers themselves. We were always just like, how's the experience affecting the kids? You know, and so that was really eye-opening, and to take like a step back and read through the quotes. I was just reading through them again today, that your report on the listening sessions, and I was like, oh man, I should read this like once a week, because I forget about all the quotes in there are like so rich and valuable. And I think just coming from a different perspective was just really helpful at this stage for Cobbled Streets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it seemed like you guys had some really great feedback before we worked together, but to understand sort of like the nuance behind that, it's sort of like, oh, we had a great time, we loved it. So what, you know, to like dig a little deeper into that and like what they actually loved and what those changes were was really powerful to see.
Yeah, those interviews sound very different and felt very different than like just the conversations that we have with families. They're just, they were really different. And then being able to use what they were saying to then build our survey is, you know, allows us to align our evaluation system with, you know, the families and kids we serve. That's just also so valuable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wanted to pull up the document that I created for you guys. And think this, because there are a couple of pages, I think, that highlight what we're talking about right now. So we did the research, and then I helped put together this new updated impact story that incorporated a lot of what we heard from the families, as well as the survey, to give a little data. And I think this page really kind of stood out, I know, in a lot of our conversations, because one of the challenges was really trying to help people understand what it was like to be a foster kid and even a foster family. So can you just talk a little bit about like what this page means to you, like what the difference it's made for you guys?
For just someone who also grew up in care, I think that you can explain to people as much as you can about like the trauma that you endured, or like what feelings you had, and you know, all of these bubbles, you know, are some of those feelings written down. But the rainforest analogy was like super big for us, because you know, you can explain to people, you can try to tell them like how this made you feel, but you know, sometimes people can't really resonate with that, and it's hard for them to really understand it. But so when we like talk about a field, right? A field's open, clear, you can see things clearly for miles and miles. But when we started talking about the rainforest, well, when you mentioned that one of the guardians had mentioned a rainforest analogy, that was like, oh my gosh, that's so like perfect, because you know, that's what it really is like. You know, you can't, when you're in a rainforest, you don't know what's out there. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's coming your way. And that's exactly what it's like for caregivers and for kids in care, because, you know, they don't even know what's going to happen to them next week. They don't know who they'll be with, if they'll be with their siblings. It's just so unknown. And that's exactly what a rainforest is. It's just so unknown. And for us, it's really been helpful to kind of set the tone, set the scene for when we're trying to explain the importance of our impact and our mission. I feel like it's been really helpful, because people are more of like, yeah, like, you know, they're like getting in that mindset of like, oh my gosh, like this is a whole lot, you know, you don't even know what's coming next. So I think it was super helpful for us to come across this.
Yeah, and I love that it came from a conversation with a family, because you know, they were trying to articulate their experience of like, what do people, not even their own family members, don't understand what their life is like raising foster and kinship kids.
And I appreciated that, like when in our initial conversations, you talked about like mind mapping and trying to create sort of mind maps for, you know, funders and people we're explaining this to, and creating these metaphors is a helpful tool for that. Yeah,
just to help get that idea across quickly without having to, you know, give them a whole series on what it's like to live in this world.
Yeah.
Let's see. There was another page. I thought this one also stood out. because I know when we were initially talking, you were very focused on the impact on the children that you work with. Can you talk a little bit about how this page changes the conversation you have with donors?
Yeah, I think anytime you can expand your impact to the larger community and network surrounding, the direct population you serve, it's going to resonate more with people who are trying to fund your work, right? Because they see a larger impact in a greater footprint that you're making. So when we previously would just focus on the impact we were having on kids, which of course is our major goal, then we learned through the listening sessions that some of the caregivers were saying, I wouldn't be able to be doing this without Cobbled Streets. And it's like, oh, wow. Okay, well, funders need to know that because that like broadens our impact, and that's really important for people to hear when they're considering supporting us. So, and then not only the caregivers, but even the broader community around and the partners that we bring in, and the community events we're able to create. So, yeah, this was huge for us to be able to describe it in this way.
And then let's see, the other page, I think this was another page you mentioned was helpful. And this was really taking the words that caregivers use to describe Cobbled Streets and really bring it back to you and what they see as what's unique about Cobbled Streets. So what has changed with this page and how it's been helpful for you?
I think it just reminds me, because I'm the one who really talks with these guardians, and when we set up requests and what we plan to support their children with, it just it makes me take more of that initiative to really go in depth more about being supportive and really trying to connect with the guardian and get a better understanding of where they're at right now with the kid, what their relationship is like, taking past experience from other guardians I've been working with and seeing hey, this has worked for someone else, maybe this will work for you, or if they have their own idea, and just let them know hey, we can try this out. For example, some kids they have a lot of aggression, and so we'll get them into karate, and sometimes it's not a good fit. Sometimes it just isn't helpful to their situation, and we come back and we say, hey, let's figure out what we can do, what would be more appropriate for him since we tried that out. So really just, again, I think everyone at Cobbled Streets is so genuine, not only because of their personal experience, but just in the work in the last 5 years, we've seen how positive people react to when people are being genuine towards you, when they really care about you, your kid, and it's not just checking off boxes or anything like that. We generally want to see these kids move forward in life, and we know that the guardians are dealing with so much, so whatever we can do to take that pressure off of them, and we just know that it helps.
Yeah, and it's really lovely that this didn't come from a closed door room. These were the actual words that we heard from people. So I think it reflects the work that you're doing, but also reminds you of what's really working for people.
And we didn't know this before. We didn't know how they would describe us.
Yeah.
So it's again, really eye-opening, and just to sit back and take in this perspective at this point in Cobbled Streets is life is really important to do.
Yeah, and it's just such a reflection of the great work that you're doing. So I know there's some different areas that you're doing work in, and one of them is providing these unique experiences for kids in foster and kinship care. And so I think this was a particular story that came out, and going back to the idea of, when someone might say that, is Cobbled Streets like Make-A-Wish? Are they just giving a kid something that they wanted and then moving on? And so I think this story really contradicts that and talks about some of the depth of the work that you do. So I'm curious, especially Bissy, since you're doing some of the fundraising, how has this page made a difference when you talk to funders about Cobbled Streets work? This
really gets at some of the feedback we were getting, that these are nice little extras, that to get a bike, oh, isn't that sweet? So this really helps us flush out the all the different outcomes along the way of, I love how you wrote when a bike is more than a bike, like what it really means and what are all the different impacts getting a bike has on a child who has experienced usually a lot of trauma in their life and a lot of inconsistency and often has never had things of their own. So it's not just having a bike, and I love how this really takes people through the process, right? They've never owned something. They get to choose their bike. Think about when you get to choose something, most kids get to go out and pick it out, what color they like, that they like streamers on it. Then a lot of these kiddos are getting like hand-me-downs or, like something, or like to have something of their own. The lessons that they learn, lessons in owning something, taking care of something, making sure you lock it up and keep it safe. So there's all these little side outcomes that side impacts that come from just one experience that seems as simple as a new bike. And this helps us take the audience through those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was really great. And then we were able also to go back and then measure how people felt about these experiences with the survey. How it helped build positive memories, help them bond with their family, and tie that back to some of those examples. And so I'm curious, when you think about where you were before, maybe a year ago, how has this work changed how you fundraise today?
Well, it's all pretty fresh still. So we're developing, how we use it. Well, for one, we're like a printing organization, a printing and mailing type of an organization. So we were able to print these stories and they look beautiful and share them, especially with our major donors that we already have. So the donors that have been consistent with us and sustained us for our first 3, 4, 5 years of Cobbled Streets. Those are some of the most important donors that we have, and for them to see where we started and that we're here is very impressive and shows them that their support has really led us to this new place, a higher level with our work and understanding and demonstrating our impact. So that is one thing that we've used these for already. And then, of course, moving forward with fundraising, it'll be a really useful tool for engaging new funders, new businesses. We just had for a grant application, we had to do a presentation. So we utilize pieces from this. So it's just this very helpful tool. The other thing we're hoping it will do is allow to other members of our organization to help fundraise more easily. So, for example, our board members will be able to use these when they're talking to new potential funders or donors, program team, like anyone, our events people, if they want to engage a new potential donor, now they have this consistent language and this tool that can help them through a brief presentation or a conversation.
And to add on to that, I feel like before, when it came to presenting our data, we knew we had we knew what we were doing was good, but I don't think we had a lot of confidence in the data we were gathering. And I can just feel this shift of energy in the confidence of just how we're presenting ourselves. Like I even, like Bissy said, I got to help present to hopefully get that grant. But, we used some slides and I was able to just feel confident about describing it and talking about all of the statistics. We knew, I think going into this and knowing that we were super thorough about everything. Well, you, Emily, you were very thorough about why you wanted to collect things, how you wanted to go about certain things. And for us, that's just been it helped clear things up for us. And I think just working with you has helped build confidence in how we present ourselves to people and knowing that hey, we have this data and we can back it up now. Not only will our verbalization of how we feel about what we're doing, but we got the statistics, we got the data, So that I think has been wonderful and from a year ago to now.
That's wonderful to hear. I mean, it's you're doing such amazing work that I love that you're able to then just be really clear and confident about how you describe it. I'm curious if there's anything that's changed about how Cobbled Streets sees itself in its community.
I mean, I knew we were important, but just as we grow, as we get older, I can see just the importance and the uniqueness of what we do, because we're not only like individualizing helping these families, but with the Ambassador Project, we really are building this community, and I can see it just in any place I show up where Cobbled Streets is involved. People are always like, oh my gosh, like they're just so kind with like how they come up to us, and they're appreciative of the work that we've done with them. So it's just, I knew the importance of it. As we grow and as we start doing these things where we're just trying to build ourselves up, I can see it. It's truly like we are growing each year.
Awesome. You guys are going to be so big in the next 5 years. I guess just as a last question, were there any unexpected benefits to this work?
No, we had all the confidence in the world that this was going to be amazing from the very beginning. No, I just think we've talked about, just like seeing our impact a little bit differently, a little bit broader, which was an unexpected benefit for sure. Going back today and rereading the report you created about the listening sessions with all the quotes, I mean, there's pages and pages of quotes that we can continue to reference from the people that we serve that will be an ongoing source of like marketing material for a long time. So that's unexpected, is that like this isn't just one story. It's not a one and done. We'll be able to use those for a long time to come, with our fundraising, with our marketing, and even with our program work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how can what's the best way for people to find out more about Cobbled Streets?
I would say our website is definitely the first place I would direct people to go. That it has all kinds of information about our programs and our impact. You could sign up for our newsletter, and then which we send out once every other month. So then you learn about some of our stories and the events that we're sending. You could also sign up to volunteer if you're local to Colorado. And social media, you could always pop on there. We're pretty active on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. So those are places you can learn a little bit more.
Excellent. Well, Bissy and Kiara, it's been wonderful talking about this project, just kind of recapping it, and of course working with you this year. So thank you for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you so much for all your thinking and your creativity. And I know you keep thinking about us and reaching out when you have ideas, and just having that outside source of support with this work, but helping us articulate our impact just continues to be so valuable for us. So thank you. And it's always like our 5-year birthday present.